Thank you, everybody, for taking the time to join us. I very briefly want to mention that we are having some translation available, and I will introduce the interpreters in a minute. Please introduce yourselves in the chat. Let us know where you're reaching out to us from, and just sit tight, and we will get started right away. Thank you, everybody who's joining us today. Is if you need Spanish translation, click on the globe icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Si necesitan traducción al español, hagan clic el icono del globo en la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom, por favor. Si no prenden el audio, no pueden escuchar a Carmen. Ok, bueno, muchas gracias. Quiero asegurar que todos estemos en la misma página. Quiero asegurar que todos ya tengan su traducción prendida. I just want to make sure that everybody is ready and has their translations options ready to go. Before we get started, bienvenidos, welcome everybody. Please, por favor, pongan su nombre y organización que representan. Cualquier información que quieran compartir, pónganlo en el chat para saber de dónde se están uniendo con nosotros, desde dónde, qué parte de los Estados Unidos. Please share in the chat where you're joining us from so that we know that you're here with us. And thank you so much for joining us today on this very important conversation that we're going to be having today. Farm worker homes, turning advocacy into real housing solutions. We have two amazing guests with us today. Lori Johnson, who is the legal director of Farmworker Justice, and we also have Sandra Sandy Sencion, who is joins us from the Ayudando Latinos A Soñar team. She is the I can't see here in the, but she's a farm worker outreach coordinator with Ayudando Latinos A Soñar. And so today, just to talk about the issues of farm worker. Oh, and of course, I'm Elizabeth Rodriguez. I'm the director of farm worker advocacy here at National Farm Worker Ministry. And so today we're going to be talking about this very important issue of farm worker housing and how we can support, the efforts that are happening across the country. Farm workers, their issues with farm worker housing is one of the top major issues that farm workers experience. Our partner, Migrant Justice, in 2024 released a study that they conducted in their area with dairy and farm workers in the Burlington, Vermont area, in the state of Vermont. And 82% of the people surveyed, the farm workers surveyed, reported that they live in unsafe or substandard housing. That is a significant number. And of course, there's a lot of variables, a lot of things that go into this. For example, the fact that they get paid in low wages. They have language barriers. They have education barriers. Many of them don't have a social security. Still, 82%. That is a high number. And that is why it is so important for us to understand and learn more about farm workers and the issues that they're having with their living conditions. So today we're going to get a little glimpse into the reality of how farm workers live. And I'm excited where our first presenter is going to be Lori Johnson. She's going to talk to us about policies. And I'm really interested in hearing more about everything that we can learn, especially with the upcoming changes to farm worker housing. Lori, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon, everyone. Buenas tardes. I'm going to try and share my screen. So let's see if we can get my presentation started.
There you are.
Oh, there it is. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, so here in North Carolina, the housing regulations are covered by the North Carolina Department of Labor, the Ag Safety and Health Division known as ASH. I have the link to the website here, but again, I noticed that in the chat there were people from all over the country. I'd encourage you to see what's available in your state. Here in North Carolina, they conduct pre-occupancy inspections of farm worker housing to test compliance with the Migrant Housing Act of North Carolina. And they'll also respond to worker complaints of improper housing. Now, when I use the Migrant Housing Act applies if there's even one migrant worker. When I use the word migrant worker, um, I'm not referring to immigration status. I'm referring to someone who has to leave their permanent place of residence for employment and can't return to their permanent place of residence overnight. Um, the inspections are done pre-occupancy, and I want to highlight that because one problem that can often arise is if the agency that's in charge with inspection is going out there before people arrive, they may have been told that X number of workers are going to be arriving, and then more workers show up. And so in my experience, previously working with Legal Aid in North Carolina, overcrowding can be an issue. If the agency is only approved for so many beds and more people show up than the number of beds that are approved, then there's an issue. So the pre-occupancy inspection can cause difficulty. Once the housing is inspected, the housing should display a certificate showing that the housing passed inspection and will typically display how many workers that was approved for, which will help indicate whether there's an overcrowding issue and whether the housing is going to be sufficient. Now, this is under the North Carolina Migrant Housing Act. I'm just going to use to sort of illustrate what regulations are. But again, this is going to vary according to where you are in the country. And they're going to provide a copy of the presentation. So I'm not going to go through this one by one, but to go over some frequent issues that we have seen. The housing needs to be free from rodents and insects. That includes bed bugs. We've seen bed bugs in camps here in North Carolina. Each worker needs to have a bed. That bed has to be elevated 12 inches from the floor and a mattress. There should be storage for clothing and personal items like lockers. This is important because with camps that often don't have locks on doors, there have been thefts. Workers leave all day to go to work and they come home and sometimes their belongings are gone. It's important to have some sort of storage space where you can put passports and other personal items and have them be safe. Bathrooms and laundry facilities are in here in North Carolina. There are some regulations. A flush toilet's not required. An outhouse is sufficient, but you have to have it. But it has to be one for at least one for every 15 people of the same sex. With H-2A workers in particular, there aren't as many women. Typically, tends to be largely men, and so there has been an issue in the past of whether there was a bathroom that would be designated toward women. And that does need to be made available here. The number of shower heads, the number of hand washing basins, and this has impact on health and safety. If workers are returning from a hot day or a very hot day, having sufficient showers that people can cool themselves off can have an impact on health. Stoves with one working burner for every 5 people. Having the regulations be met with the kitchen is important for a number of reasons. One of which is that if these items aren't available, people can often end up having to spend more money to provide to receive prepared food, which can be more expensive and cut into their earnings. If you go to the NCDOL. Oh, I do want to point out that some H2A employers have meal plans. That's fine so you'll see some workers in motels and they don't have kitchens. They don't have all of these things, even though they are migrant workers. And that's okay if in the job order, in the H-2A job order, the employer provides that it's like sets out that a meal prevent plan is going to be provided and what the cost of that would be. If you go to the North Carolina ASH website, you can see the inspection sheets, both in English and Spanish. NCDOL has investigators that can do investigations. They have investigators that speak Spanish. Here in North Carolina, you can have a confidential complaint in that the name of the complainant's not going to be revealed to the public. The NCDOL will see the name of the complainant. And we have worked with inspectors to try and optimize keeping the complainant's name private by having private interviews, not letting the employers, by speaking with everyone so the employer's not seeing the agent just speaking with a few people or one person that would reveal who had made the complaint. If a complaint's going to be filed, you can do this a couple of ways. You can call your state agency directly. Here in North Carolina, there's a number. Another option is to find your local legal aid unit. Here in North Carolina, that's the legal aid of North Carolina's Farmworker Unit. They provide free services for those who are income eligible. Most farm workers are going to be income eligible, and they can assist with a referral if they are unable to represent you to other attorneys. And they can assist in workers in filing a complaint if housing is not up to code. So let me go back. I've talked quite a bit about North Carolina protections. Under there are additional protections under the H-2A program. The housing must meet OSHA standards. For most housing, if the housing dates from prior to 1980, then it has to meet with Employment Training Administration standards. So there are standards that you can find online if you go to the USDOL website that have to be met. Rentals need only meet state standards. In some places, family housing has to be provided where that has been the prevailing practice. Here in North Carolina, it is not, but in other places that may actually hold. Let's say for retaliation, workers are often concerned about retaliation. I mean, when you're a farm worker, I think even more so than other occupations because it is seasonal. And so you want to be able to come back to work the next year. There's one way that you can alleviate some concerns about retaliation is that there are protections. Here in North Carolina, we have what we call the RETA. You can read about that on the NCDOL website. But there are additional protections for all H-2A workers. Under the H-2A contract, the employer cannot retaliate, threaten, coerce, blacklist, discharge, or in any manner discriminate against workers who've engaged in certain activities, which would include filing a housing complaint or consulting with a government official or legal services staff about a housing complaint or your rights under the H-2A contract. So there are some protections there as well. And then I would encourage all of you to find out what your other state and local protections would be. So I know that a lot of people have questions about these new H-2A regulations. Just in the past year, there have been a couple of rulemakings that impact H-2A workers and U.S. workers, well, all farm workers really, because it would impact H-2A worker or U.S. workers at corresponding employment with H-2A employers and just farm workers being in the same labor market. One of those rulemakings has not been finalized. It's still pending, which could impact DOL recognition of the right of farm workers to have visitors in their housing with key service providers. That's still pending. The other rulemaking, which was effective upon publication on October 2nd, for job orders filed that day or later, goes to wages and housing. Wages for H-2A workers, as many of you know, it's based on preventing an adverse effect. The idea that if you have a government program that's going to bring in an additional supply of workers, the concern is that additional supply would drive down wages and working conditions for local workers. So they created a number of regulations designed to protect against that, including a wage rate that's called the adverse effect wage rate. And that's what H-2A workers have been getting paid. It's one of the wage rates. You have to pay the highest of the prevailing wage rate, the adverse effect wage rate, or the federal state minimum wage, or a collective bargaining agreement wage. For many or most H-2A workers, the AWR is going to be significant. So what this ruling did, and it only applies to job orders coming in after October 2nd and getting approved, is that it created tiered skill levels, where the majority of positions would be assigned skill level 1, which was allotted a wage at the 17th percentile of what the AWR for that job code would be. So instead of paying the average, it's now paying the 17th percentile for most workers. DOL itself has estimated that this is going to gut farm worker wages significantly, by billions in the coming years. In addition, it did a few other things, but I'll focus here on just the housing. What it does is it sets a lower hourly wage rate for H-2A workers, purportedly to pay for the H-2A housing. This rule, by the way, is called the adverse effect wage rate methodology for temporary employment of H-2A non-immigrants in non-range occupations in the United States. So for the housing, it sets a sort of offset rate. They tried not calling it a deduction. Purportedly, it goes to the value of housing. There have been advocates have some concerns about that, given that it was based on 2-bedroom HUD apartments and the value of that divided by a 40-hour work week. Of course, many of you know that farm workers often work much longer than 40 hours a week, and farm worker housing often would not farm worker housing can vary greatly, but not all farm worker housing would be at the level of a HUD apartment. Take, for example, here in North Carolina, where they don't require flush toilets. So DOL has stated that this rate will be applied regardless of whether H-2A workers are actually using the provided housing or seek housing on their own. But there are a number of unanswered questions with these new housing rules, and we're looking to DOL for further guidance to try and answer these questions. Meanwhile, there are court challenges. The United Farm Workers has brought a lawsuit against the Department of Labor. I am counsel on that case, along with Covington Burling, CRLAF, and other attorneys. The status of that right now is that we have petitioned for a stop or temporary stop of the rule, and immediate relief. And that motion is pending. So advocates are moving forward with the position that H-2A workers who receive housing that do not meet standards should not be paid that lower offset rate. But we're looking to the DOL right now for guidance. There are a number of unanswered questions. We have if you go to the Farmworker Justice website, there's also a fact sheet that you can read to tell you about more about this rule and what we know about it. We will be providing updates as things may happen in the court challenges. So what can the community do? Farm workers are often isolated from the community in which they live and work. Many are new to the area. They travel for work and may not have the support networks or community ties that other workers would have. So it is very important that the community assist. Some of you may do outreach to migrant labor camps. and have the chance to meet with workers. You can let them know about available resources such as the local legal aid office or the local agency, state agency that's charged with inspecting and approving and investigating housing violations. If you go to your local legal aid website, you will typically be able to find Know Your Rights information that will give you up-to-date information on what the farm workers' rights are, what wages are in effect, et cetera, as well as how they can go about filing a complaint if there are poor conditions. As for the new AWR rule, we continue to be concerned about U.S. workers as well, who are competing now against workers being paid lower wages and how that might impact their ability to the wages that they receive. So we will be watching to see how these court challenges proceed and what relief may result. And to the extent we receive any additional guidance from the DOL of FAQ, for example, we will be posting that on our website. So, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Lori, for that information. It's important to know, that we are looking for guidance from Department of Labor. These recent changes to the AWR, they're concerning. We are here because we understand that farm workers are vulnerable. They're vulnerable to many issues, and lowering their wages, backtracking, protections that were in place, and all this good work that's been done to protect not just the HUA workers, but protect the farm workers that sometimes feel that they have to compete against H2A workers. All of that is amazing work, and then now it's all being taken back, and we're just sitting here waiting for Department of Labor to give us some guidance, and that's really where we are. We're on top of it every day. We're trying to see where this is going, and play defense. Legal aid is our best tool right now to keep on top of the situation and to monitor and move forward with anything that we could do. So make sure that you're keeping legal aid as one of your tools, one of your allies close by as we continue to monitor the situation so that we can see what the impact is going to be, although we already are concerned about the impact that it will have, right? So now I want to introduce our next guest, Sandy Sencion from Half Moon Bay, California. She's with ALAS, Ayudando Latinos A Soñar, and their community, their organization is very much responding to farm worker housing issues. So I want her to come on and talk to us about her work with farm workers and farm worker issues. Thank you, Sandy, for joining us today.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, National Farmworker Ministry, for having us. My name is Sandra Sencion. I'm the Farmworker Program Director at ALAS. We're a grassroots nonprofit established in a small town called Half Moon Bay in California. As my bio states, I was born and raised here on the coast side in this small town of Half Moon Bay. And I've been working for my community for the past 10 years in programming with youth, different ages, and currently, again, serving our farm worker community here on the coast side. Sharing briefly about our organization. Name again is Ayudando Latinos A Soñar, which translates to Helping Latinos Dream, and it's an acronym for ALAS. We were an established grassroots nonprofit 501(c)(3) in 2011, again, based out of a small town called Half Moon Bay in California, and founded by Dr. Belinda Hernandez Arriaga, who's our founder and director, but is also a licensed clinical social worker herself. This photo you see here is part of our team, but we are really grateful to have just, I would say about 80% of our staff is local here to the area. And Alas has really become a home for and a economic engine for our local community here as well. Next slide, please. Thank you. Our mission statement, Alas, is dedicated to working for social wellness through multicultural practices, mental health care, individualized and collective support related to education, immigration processes, and work, while also advocating for the well-being of our community. Alas has become, again, a safe space for our Latino community. When Dr. Belinda moved from Texas to California, she realized that there was a large Latino community as part of our coastside community, although you wouldn't really see them, in the busy areas of Main Street and and we have something that's called the Pumpkin Festival, where we have, I believe it's 500,000 folks coming from all over the world to enjoy everything pumpkin, pumpkin ice cream, pumpkin pie, pumpkin donuts, you name it. But essentially, our community wasn't reflected, right, in those spaces. And prior to Ala starting, she had opened up a small pro bono private practice for families. And quickly she noticed that the need was much larger than what her small pro bono private practice was able to capture. So, she decided to close up that small practice and open up what is now called Alas, starting with the cultural arts. Our cultural arts program, as you see in some of these photos, are our Tonantzin folklorico dancing program and our Mariachi Media Luna program, with the thought and believe that through strengthening the cultural identity of our youth early on, they would feel a sense of pride, belonging, of their own culture and heritage, growing up on the coast side, which is something that again had been missing. And in that space, that was the hope that Alas would create that space for um, us to be able to share our culture with one another and to be pride, right? And not to have to hide it or have it be as a deficit as it's oftentimes showcased, but more so of an abundance and a gift to share with others. So that's how Anna started with our cultural arts program, and that's really, you'll see that throughout all of our programming. Here are several of our departments that have came or grown out of the last 15 years that we've been doing this work. We're grateful to have our in-house mental health program, our farm worker and essential worker program, which I have the honor and privilege to be leading. We have education program, social services program, research also to be able to capture the work that we're doing. Um, and again, advocacy is another big area for us. Immigration and crisis support. And one of the things that I love most about Alas is that all of our programming is free and accessible to our community. Thank you. Going into our farm worker and essential worker program, we have several different, it's a multi-layer program that we run. We have a focus on healthcare connection to our farm workers, that goes everywhere from ensuring that they have medical coverage. Once they have that established, we ensure that we look at all the different areas, gap areas that prevent our farm workers from accessing care. One of the big ones being transportation as well. A lot of our farm workers And as a background, we're on the coast side, so we're in a very remote area. A lot of farm and agriculture, no cell service. Our bus lines don't necessarily, go through a lot of these farms or housing locations. So we're able to also support our farm workers with transportation to and from their medical appointments or mental health appointments, which is such a joy to be able to do that and to be able to really address these areas, service area gaps that most often don't go, aren't addressed. And we also do follow up and just a lot of care coordination with within the medical system. We run a medical clinic for farm workers on Sundays. That program particularly opened because of our partnership with the local county that we're in, um, where we shared that farm workers, not because they don't want to prioritize their health care, but more so it's very challenging for them to take some time off to be able to get to those appointments for reasons as transportation, or they simply can't afford to take a day off, right? Or they don't have PTO, paid time off like other folks do. And so we opened up this program alongside with the county to be able to access that coverage on Sundays, to name a few, but we can move on to the next slide. One of the big events that really marked our community was January 23rd of 2023. We had, unfortunately, a tragic mass shooting here in our community where one of the farm workers opened fire on um, at two of our local farms, and seven of our farm workers unfortunately lost their lives in this tragic mass shooting. Uh, and this tragedy really unveiled the living conditions of the farm workers here in Half Moon Bay, California, as part of San Mateo County, which is a very affluent, one of the wealthiest counties, I believe, in California. And one of our local supervisors that he's actually overseeing our district here. He uh, took some photos of the living conditions and posted them, shared them on social media. And it really shook not only our local community, but also on a national level, where it really depicted the horrible living conditions our farm workers were living in, storage containers, um, that were just not equipped whatsoever to be housing folks. Um, within other, uh, there was no running water, just terrible, terrible living conditions. And um, that the tragedy has also led to a lot of our local leaders coming together and um, also working with local nonprofits such as ALAS and our county and city partners to be able to ensure that justice is served, and also that we are working together to ensure that farm workers are housed, that they have access to dignified home, and that we have conversations on how we're going to prevent this from ever happening in our community ever again, while also ensuring that the families that were affected are housed. There was about 40 families that were displaced due to the tragic mass shooting. And the city, the county, and our nonprofit partners have come together to really take care of those 40 families. And through these really difficult moments, right, a lot of our farm workers face a lot of adversity, a lot of challenges in their day-to-day lives. We also try to create spaces where our farm workers are able to um, not only be called the farm worker, right? Like they are all human, just like all of us, and that they have access to outlets, creative outlets. So Dr. Belinda started this farm worker music therapy program in the aftermath of the shooting for our farm workers to be able to express themselves through music, through community and connection, and through our cultura, right? And that's our model, cultura cura, culture heals, and it brings us together. And in one of and these photos you see our accordion program, which has been incredible, and our guitar program. And now our farm workers are able to be involved in events such as the Pumpkin Festival that I mentioned, that is so iconic to Half Bay, and really have our people represented and reflected within, our city events. And that's really empowered our farm workers. Uh, and it's just created, just again, such a safe space for our farm workers to come together weekly with the support of our farm worker music director, Hernan Hernandez Jr., who's part of the Hernandez and Tigres del Norte family. If y'all may know or have heard of them, they're a big in the music industry. Next slide, please. Also, under our farm worker program, we have what's called the Alas Farm Worker Equity Express bus. This is a double-decker bus, state-of-the-arts bus that was created and crafted specifically to go out to our farms. Something that we take very it's top priority for us is to really think about health equity and what that looks like. To me, that looks like access, that looks like visibility, that looks like outreach. And through this mobile program, we're able to outreach to our farm workers in the afternoon hours. Again, we realize that our farm workers, we don't want to disrupt their day, their work day, or they aren't also able to come out of work to be able to access services. So we created this mobile afternoon program where our farm workers are able to access services in the evening. This double-decker bus is equipped with Wi-Fi, with private rooms for mental health. We bring art for the kids. And it's really a center, or Anna's Wellness Center on wheels. And I'll leave it at that. I can share a lot more, but we have a lot to cover. Here's some of our programs that we cover on the bus. We bring food access to our farm workers, right? Our farm workers are our doctors of the land, like Dr. Belinda mentions. They have the knowledge of the land. They are highly skilled in the work that they do every single day. It's backbreaking work. And oftentimes, our farm workers are struggling to make ends meet themselves and to even buy groceries, especially during these times. So we've partnered with our local bank, as well as Mercal Mexicano, to be able to bring food access to our farms and farm workers. We bring joy to our kids too, the children of the farm workers. We want them to dream big, to dream what's possible, and we're able to do that through our incredible Art and Heart on the Bus program. The kids are able to go up on the second story of the bus, create, express themselves, and they're able to post up their art on the windows every week. We have English class for our farm workers. And I'd like to mention that every location that we visit, our program is curated to their interests. That is our focus, is to really elevate our farm workers' voices. And we really take our time to build that trust with our farm workers, get to know what their interests are, and really create something special for them. We have nutrition class, again, partnering with our local food bank of Silicon Valley. We've been able to come to them, right, with these conversations, and not in a way where we are pushing any curriculum or anything like that, but more so building community and bonding over our culture, our tradition, and how we can make minor changes to be able to um, take care of our health. And so we're just really grateful for that opportunity to partner with like-minded partners. In terms of advocacy, we have what's called Farmworker Friday as well. It's a way for partners, anybody really, to get involved and connected with their farm worker community, break bread, and show appreciation to our farm workers and learn a lot more about what their day-to-day struggles and are as well. We have the Basar. We take donations once a month because we're short on storage. Next slide, please. Field trips, culturally, to our farm workers are very hardworking people, oftentimes working 7 days a week, providing for their families. And something that we've been able to do with this double-decker bus is really talk about self-care, what that looks like. Here in the Bay Area, we have incredible local parks. Golden Gate Park is beautiful, and we've been able to take our farm workers on several different uh, field trips and open it up to their families as well to make it family inclusive. Some of our current initiatives really supporting our community with this ongoing and current political climate. Our community is under a lot of scrutiny at the moment, and it's increased the fear and anxiety for a lot of our community. We've been really trying to keep the calm as much as possible to um, use our local partners of the Rapid Response Network when there is a thought of ICE being in our community, and there's a verification process that is to be done, and really just supporting our farm workers' mental health as well. Which leads me to 555 Kelly, our senior farm worker housing project, in collaboration with the developer Mercy Housing. And this dream was, that seed was planted about 4 years ago, where the city of Half Moon Bay had purchased a home, and it had been sitting there. The city of Half Moon Bay had opened it up for RFQs for proposals, and really, again, going back to the basic needs, right? We're doing the food, we're doing the mental health, we're doing the cultural arts, we're addressing all these areas of need, and we realized that housing was a big area of need for our farm workers that they had been struggling with for a very long time. This was prior to the mass shooting that took place in our community. And we came together, Dr. Belinda. Again, housing isn't our specialty, but we realize that that is something that farm workers need, right? Especially our senior farm workers, as they're aging and they're still out there in the fields picking the peas, the broccoli, the artichokes, the Brussels sprouts. We have farm workers in their 50s, 60s, 70s that are still out there working those fields, and they don't have a retirement account to back them up. They, again, are in these really small and confined spaces, living with their families, oftentimes sharing a one bedroom with their spouse and their children. And again, we see a lot of housing injustice here locally as well, where families sometimes aren't even able to use the restroom or the kitchen. We just had a farm worker share at the last week's city council meeting that he has to live separate from his wife and his kids because the owner doesn't allow them to live together. And so they're currently living separately, which is very heartbreaking, but very true to the realities that our farm workers are facing here locally in Half Moon Bay. Um, that being said, again, we partnered with Mercy Housing, who's a housing expert. We have the connection with our farm worker community, and um, it was a perfect partnership to be able to move this forward. Uh, it's been 4 years that we've been in the process of pushing this housing project forward. Um, Very dense meetings, oftentimes meetings that go on after midnight, 6 hour long meetings where we're mobilizing our senior farm workers to show up and share their stories in these spaces because oftentimes their stories are not uh, being taken into consideration because there isn't that bridge um, bringing in our farm workers into, again, these city council meetings or our elected officials. And so that's been one of our also top priorities is to ensure that we elevate our farm workers' voices, their stories, and continue to fight the fight for them. 55 Kelly is 40 units of residential housing. It's a 5-story building with a combination of, this is a little outdated. It's 2 bedrooms, 1 bedroom, and studios. Um, this is where Alas comes in as a community partner. Uh, the building counts with a farm worker resource center where our farm workers will have the support on site and the ability to get the programming that I mentioned before. Mentioned a few, but some of them again are mental health, medical care, social and community support. Um, on site. And again, that's also been one of the things that's been scrutinized by City Council and the Planning Commission. And we show up every time to that City Council meeting as hopeful and positive as we can be to be able to share that really the groundwork for this project has been built over time, that trust has been built over time, and our farm workers don't open up to anybody, right? And you have to, Alice has been working to build that trust every single day when we show up with the bus, with our outreach, materials and our programming. And that is a hope is to have on-site support for our senior farm workers as they're aging gracefully because that's what they deserve. Um, Next slide, please. And a little more information about our organization, our website. If you have any questions, feel free to write them in the chat. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy, for presenting that. So the 555 Kelly project, it's my understanding, that those units are going to be for, and correct me if I'm wrong, for elderly people, retired farm workers.
Correct, yes. We are, the requirements is that the farm worker is applying. When it gets to that phase, we're not there yet, but I'm hopeful we will. Uh, the requirements are 55 plus because again, we're still in the approval process. We're waiting on the city of Half Moon Bay to grant the land lease agreement to Mercy Housing to be able to move the project forward. There's still a lot of fundraising to be done, but that the land lease agreement is one of the requirements to be able to apply for more funding. So it's a very complicated and tedious process that we're following. But yeah, that is the hope that farm workers 55 plus are able to apply for this housing.
Okay, great. And just so that the audience gets a little bit of understanding, and I know we visited with you all in January 2025. We were there, but do you guys do in your community? Do you see a lot of guest workers, a lot of H2A workers come in?
Yeah, and thank you, to the National Farm Worker Ministry. It was actually our partners last year. As I mentioned, we had the tragic mass shooting, and every year we host a remembrance event so that we don't forget, our elected officials don't forget that we're in this together and we made the commitment to work together towards better conditions, living and working conditions for our farm worker community. Um, and going back to sorry, can you repeat your question? I just wanted to make that.
Do you guys have like do you guys have a population of guest workers, of H2A workers also?
Yes, we have a small group of H2A workers. It's about 20 workers.
Oh, okay, that's small.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's different um of it's different across the country, and some places rely more on H2A workers, right,
Mhm.
and some less. So it's good to hear that you know that you don't have a lot of farm work, a lot of H2A guest workers. But Mary Soph is asking in our chat, what was the cause of the mass shooting? 7 died, 5 were Chinese, and 2 Latinos.
Yes. So as I mentioned, it was one of the farm workers that opened fire at two of these farms, local farms. Um, the trial is still going on to this day. And what they shared is that that individual was upset because I believe he had been asked of the owner to pay out of pocket for a part. I believe it was on a tractor that he may have broken, and that threw him, you know, off the edge. And he it was during the workday. This individual worked and lived on site of this farm, was living in one of these storage containers themselves. And unfortunately, that is what has been shared that led to um, him opening fire at two of our local farms and leading to the death of seven of our local farm workers. But that also speaks to the working conditions, right? Our farm workers are again paid minimum wage at that, but that's another area recent under our farm worker program that we're addressing is the labor rights component of our work, to be able to ensure that our farm workers are getting paid minimum wage, right? That um, the owners or the managers are providing the materials needed for work. Um, because again, as farm worker that is living on site, minimum wage, possibly getting paid under minimum wage, and having to get asked to pay out of pocket for something that is a work material, right? Um, is something that we're also looking into as an organization.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing about that. It was a tragedy, and it did reveal, the poor living conditions, like you mentioned, of farm workers, and how that all affected their well-being. I know that everybody here today agrees with me when we say um, farm workers are the heart of our community, and their housing has a lot to do with their own well-being, how
Definitely.
they're able to recuperate after a long day's work, how they're able to maintain their mental health sanity. And Lori went over the legal aspects, how they're protected for the bare necessities. I learned that in North Carolina, up until recently, they had to provide a bed, but they didn't have to provide a mattress.
Mhm.
And so there's a lot of stuff that we can do Mary, so just, yes, all of these are red flags to human trafficking, labor exploitation, right? So we only have a few minutes left, but I would really like if Lori could recap the ways that the community can get involved in these legislative efforts that can help us make a small change that'll go a long way.
Sure. I also wanted to add, sorry about the tech issues. Also, that for non-H2A workers, there's a federal statute called the Migrant and Seasonal Agricultural Worker Protection Act that does have some housing protections there as well, which track to OSHA standards or Employment Training Administration standards. So those are additional protections that you have even if you're not an H2A worker. The Farmworker Justice will, with our monthly policy updates, will talk about pending legislation. You can take a look there to see if there's anything in your area that you can do something about. But I think one thing that's very important is having the stories. We need to know how this is impacting people. How are U.S. workers who are not at H2A employers, what's happening to their wages, to their ability to access housing, now that employers have this somewhat of an incentive to hire H2A workers who will then be paid at a lower rate to occupy the limited number of beds that they have in their housing. What's the impact of that? What's happening if work is not available throughout the job contract and somebody tries to bring a three-quarter guarantee claim now? Are they going to be paid at the housing offset rate? I want to hear what's happening and getting those stories, what happens if somebody's injured? How does these new wage rates impact the average weekly wage for workers who have been injured and determining what kind of benefits they're going to get? If you can get these stories to if you can get what's happening to your local legal aid, to Farmworker Justice, to other advocates who are going to be providing comments and meeting with policymakers so that they know what is happening in this housing. What are the housing issues that you're seeing? If somebody hasn't actually visited farm worker housing, they may not understand what it means to deny somebody the right to have visitors. They may not understand why having a sufficient number of showers is important. So just getting those stories out there. What are you seeing? Talking to workers. What is the impact of pending legislation, of rulemaking on them? And then advocates can kind of take that to people who can make a difference.
Thank you, Lori, for that. And for the audience, I just want you to know that this webinar today is a part of a series of webinars that we've had where we have invited guests to come in, our partners to come and talk about farm worker issues. We've had organizations, Migrant Justice, Farm Worker Housing Development Corporation. They've presented on how they handled issues in their areas. If you want to learn more or you want to backtrack, we even just published a short video, educational video on testimonies by farm workers about their issues with housing. If you want to learn more, if you're interested in reviewing this material, feel free to visit our website, our landing page for housing issues, or go to our YouTube so that you can see these videos. You're also invited to go look at our partners' websites, but be assured that we will continue to keep you updated on what is happening in Half Moon Bay and what is happening with the H2A regulations and the AWR, the changes in pay. We're going to keep updating you. These partners that we have here today, we're so grateful for them for being with us and for sharing with us. And, we look forward to having them again in the future. We will keep you updated. So stay tuned. Sign into our e-news so that you can get the up-to-date information. If you want to contact me, my information is also on the website. My email is easy. It's farmworkeradvocacy@nfwm.org. So that you can reach out to us, especially if you have more questions about labor trafficking. That's one of my areas of expertise. So I would love to talk to or answer any questions anybody would have. And is there a video for solutions? How can we help build or provide housing? Any funding programs, for example, by one of our guests. Yes, we have videos. previous webinars and videos that we've published that are available to the public. And then they're also on our landing page. You can find resources and you can find other partners, the work that they're doing. So I don't want to take more time from you guys. Thank you so much for all of you who are here. And if you have any questions or concerns, anything, feel free to reach out. That's what we're here for. Thank you so much for Sandy and for Lori today for joining us and for sharing with us all of that. Thank you, Sandy, and thank you, Lori, again. Have a great afternoon, and we'll be in touch.